Sometimes it's not even about self-care, it's about basic needs. We're so convinced that we have to sacrifice everything all the time. And sometimes we are in relationships with partners who are on board with that, who convince us that that's our job. It's not our job to sacrifice our basic needs. One piece of this is kind of looking at our day and saying, if I looked at the morning, afternoon, and evening, am I drinking water in all three of those time periods? Am I eating real food and not just the crusts of my kids' peanut butter and jelly? You need to be meeting your basic needs at several points every single day. And it starts there.
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. What is up, you guys? As always, I am so excited about the conversation that I had with this week's guest, Stacy McCann. She is a licensed therapist and a parent coach with over 13 years experience. And we talk all things preventing mom overwhelm, overstimulation, and burnout. We share the same philosophy that in order to be amazing mamas, we have got to put ourselves first. But we talk about what does real self-care actually look like? And she introduces us to her model of looking at the physical, mental, and emotional part of yourself every single day. We talk about the mental load. We talk about decision fatigue. We talk about our partners reading the room so they can share the load, and how if you take small action every single day, it will actually begin to add up and help you to feel better. Because guess what? When we feel better, we can be better for the things that matter most in our lives. So I hope you enjoy. And if you haven't already, make sure that you join me over in my private Facebook group, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where I'm going live every week and giving free coaching and just extending the conversations that we're having on the podcast, trying to create a safe community where moms can post real stuff and just be in support of one another. Because you know what? This is another thing we talk about in this interview coming up, is how we think that we're going to have this mom tribe, this mom community, and we don't. And so I am doing my best to create something magical over there. And other than that, I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and therefore each other. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod, where we normalize normal and find freedom through a life unperfected. What is up, mama? I am Brooke Jean. I'm your host, and I am so excited to have this conversation today. I know last week on the podcast, when I talked about working mom problems, I talked about how excited I was to have this conversation with Stacy, but she was in the middle of what we always have to do as working moms, which is juggle sick children and working moms. So the whole audience, actually, Stacy's been waiting for you for a week. We're so excited to have you here. So before we jump in, I want to go ahead and read her bio so you guys know who we're working with this week. So Stacy McCann, she says, I'm Stacy, a licensed therapist and parent coach of over 13 years. And a mom of one sweet and spicy little girl. In my businesses, Present Moment Counseling and Present Parent Coaching, I work to support burnt out, overstimulated, and overwhelmed moms who don't have the village they expected to have and just want to feel better. Hello, that's everyone that's listening right now.
It's all of us.
Yeah. You're speaking our language already, my love. When I launched my practice last year, I was seeing friends, family, and even myself struggling with the weight of the world. I knew that moms were completely undersupported, and I wanted to change that. I'm a trained perinatal provider and work from an attachment solutions focused lens to support moms in all stages. In my free time, I enjoy being outside, cooking and baking, gardening, traveling, and creating Instagram posts in Canva. Only kind of joking. Okay, first of all, I laughed out loud when I read that because your Instagram is amazeballs. And literally, that's why I reached out to you. Guys, she's at Present Parent CS if you haven't already followed her, but she's hilarious, relatable. Like, yeah, you're good at that. So let's just knock it out of the way right now. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for rescheduling for a week later because I'm living the working mom dream over here. So I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Yes. No, I love when we can just model the real life stuff. Like,
yeah,
that's how it is. We're all doing that. And it falls on moms all the time. And so, anyways, thank you for being an example of, listen, we can have families and we can have thriving businesses. It's just a blend. It's a constant juggling act, but it never goes to plan, does it?
I just was thinking about that the other day that like, I feel like post-COVID, we've all had to really get used to disappointments, like constant canceling of plans, constant rescheduling. But maybe that we can use that to our benefit a little bit because, when we do have kids, little kids, you do have to live off the cuff. You can't, have a lot of solid plans because things are changing all the time. And so maybe what that did is help us adjust our expectations a little bit that, if we have to reschedule, we have to reschedule and it's not the end of the world. And really, we know our kids come first and that hopefully maybe some of our supervisors and our employers have sort of adjusted their expectations as well and are starting to maybe understand that a little bit. But maybe we can spin that into a little bit of a positive, I suppose.
Yeah, no, COVID definitely helped me with my control issues of like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not in charge of anything. And like,
right.
the best thing I can do is adapt and surrender and be resilient and use my damn toolkit. But like, yeah, nothing's going to plan. And that is more than okay. I'm starting to see it as just like a fun little adventure. Like, what shit show is coming down the pipeline today? Come at me. Are we going to have a problem in the marriage? Are we going to have a problem in the business? Are we going to have a problem? Like, what's coming for me today? Something's coming that I can handle it. We can handle it. So, okay. So first of all, you have one kiddo, right? A daughter.
Yes.
And how old?
She's 4.5. She just turned 4.5 on Friday. She's very aware of her half birthday. She was about, if we're going to relate it to COVID times, she was about 9 months when COVID first hit. And so it's been an interesting experience, raising her. Obviously, raising a child is always an interesting experience because you have no idea what you're doing, but raising her in a very specific time frame of what sort of the world was going through and continues to some effect go through. But yes, I have her, but I have worked with lots of kids that are not mine. I've done a lot of work, supporting parents and supporting early childhood and things of that nature. So I feel I can talk about it. I can talk to it. But definitely having your own really hammers that home that, yeah, it's a very unique period of time, but it's great. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Right. We always have to end it with that. It's great.
I know.
I wouldn't change it for anything. It's the hardest thing we've ever done. And I wouldn't change it. Okay. So I see that you've been working with people for 13 years, but in becoming a mom, was that when you really started to niche down supporting moms? Like, how has your motherhood journey shifted your business and the way that you're showing up and serving in the world right now?
So yeah, before I had my daughter, I'm a licensed social worker. I've done a lot of work with parent support, parent education. I've done a lot of work around neurodivergency and autism and ADHD and all of that. But having your own kid, you can't really put into words how that changes your perspective. I think it's almost more of a feeling than it is sort of a mental, an actual mental choice to think differently. I think it's more of a visceral reaction to parenting. Having my daughter, having COVID hit, I definitely saw that, first of all, we were promised a village that never showed up. But then secondly, what COVID did is I think further isolated people from accessing not only resources, but just like help and friends and family. I think also, the world has shifted in a way that there's some separation between people with different ideologies. It feels a lot more that people are emboldened to speak to what they believe in, which I think is not always a bad thing. But what I think happened is there's been some separation between family members, between support systems. And so I think what that did is made mothers feel like they're on their own little island sometimes. And it just highlighted how much mothers are doing all of the time. And I think they've always been doing it, but I think it's just been piled on really since COVID and in the last, 4 to 6 years. So, the spotlight's on moms and nobody's kind of showing up to support us in what we have to do. So my goal in shifting in my career was, yes, parents need support. We need to talk about kids' behavior. We need to talk about like age appropriate expectations and emotional intelligence. But we also need to talk about how to apply any of this when you are burnt out and overwhelmed and overstimulated every single day. And that's where I think it had to start. So that's why when I launched my practice, I really narrowed in on moms need coping skills, support, and tools in order to help themselves and then help their kids. It's been hammered into us. Put your kids first. Kids come first. And kids are obviously a top priority, but you can't put your kids first if you are not taking care of yourself. So that's kind of where I decided, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to start where I feel like we need to start with, which is moms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I definitely share that kind of philosophy of if we pour into ourselves first, then there's a ripple effect to that. But we cannot serve from a dry well. But then actually, what does that look like in real time and in real life? Like, that's a cool statement. That's a cool belief system. But like, I think you and I are really trying to teach and model and figure out what does that actually mean and look like day to day. So from your experience, let's talk about mom burnout, because I want to normalize that. From your experience and also what you see with your clients every day, what are some ways that mom burnout manifests, shows itself? What are some warning signs that moms are there or on their way there? And then we can talk about what the heck we can do about it.
When clients call, they're usually in burnout of some kind. A therapist is often a last resort. Like, I thought I could handle it. Everything's crumbling around me. What I see as far as similarities between a lot of my clients who are in what we would call burnout is very little or zero time alone on any given day. One of my first questions that I ask clients when they're new is, what does your week look like? And what does your weekend look like? And I ask that very specifically because I'm asking them to tell me, how much time do you have alone? Do you have any time alone? A lot of them have zero time alone. Do you have any time or interest in pursuing social stuff with friends? Do you have friends? Do you have hobbies? Are hobbies like a pipe dream that you haven't accessed in 10 years? It just kind of tells me where they're at. And the vast majority of my clients are seeking help because they don't have any of those things. I see burnout sort of manifest in these moms as inability to focus, anger, frustration, rage, mom rage, a lot of negativity, a lot of hopelessness, like things aren't going to get better. How am I going to ever feel better when I have no support network and I have no one to take my kids and I'm working 45 hours a week and, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of negative headspace, negative thoughts, a lot of anxiety because a lot of times we have so much on our to-do list and we're never getting it all done. And so that's building this anxiety that I'm not doing it. I can't do it. This is too much. And then the other piece is particularly like specific to moms of young children is the overstimulation piece where they're spending time with their kids and they are already burnt out. And so they're unfocused, they're feeling overwhelmed. And then their kids are climbing on top of them. Their kids are screaming. Their kids are, like playing with annoying toys and all this other stuff. Those are small things. But when you are in a state of burnout, those things are amplified. And so you're spending time unable to decompress because your senses are constantly being hit. So it's kind of a combination of all three of those, like overwhelm with all we have to do, and burnout and what that leads to, which is like increased anxiety, increased rage, increased anger, and then this overstimulation piece. And so when I feel like when clients hit all three, then it's like, okay, this is when it's time to have somebody help you figure out what to do. But I think the important thing to note here is that like, it's not one size fits all. I can't create this self-care plan and deliver it to all my clients and expect them to be able to use it because they're all being dealt different cards, right? And so client A's card deck is very different from client B's card deck. And in order for them to meet their own needs, they have to work within the confines of their card deck. They have to work within the confines of what's been given to them, whatever the factors are that they're working within. So I think that's an important piece of a service if you're going to seek support, that the clinician or whoever you're working with needs to make sure that they're offering you suggestions that work within your card deck, within like what's going on in your life. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. And so what do you say to the mom who says to you, I don't even know what I need because I've been so burnt out. I've been so overstimulated that I've basically dissociated. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I need. How would I know what the best self-care plan is for me? Because I hear that all the time is like, I literally don't, I'm so buried. I don't even know what would help me.
So one of the first things that I do with clients is I try and have them find like just a small moment in time after their kids go to bed is a great time, but some people are laying with their kids to sleep and they don't have that time. And so and so we have to work within, okay, is it your lunch hour? Is it the 20 minutes from when you drop your kids off to when you arrive at work? But anyway, a small chunk of time in their day. And I really encourage them every day for like a week to think of themselves in 3 categories: physical, mental, and emotional. And I really want them in this 10 to 15 minute chunk of time every day to really tune in on like, give me a word to describe what's going on with you physically, mentally, and emotionally every single day. That's why the end of the day is an ideal time because they can reflect back on the day. But if they can't, they can't. So physical, as in like, I need to touch base with myself every day and see how I'm feeling physically. Is my back hurting every single day? Am I getting migraines? Is my GI system feeling weird? Kind of tuning in to that. And then I tune into myself mentally, which I consider like brain, right? Am I just completely unfocused every day? Am I finding that like I'm focused in the morning, but after lunch, I go completely downhill? Again, it's tuning in. And then emotionally, feelings words. Today was a sad day. I was excited. Today I was motivated, whatever it is. And in the whole process, I'm encouraging them to tune in and really pay attention to themselves and to just take 10 minutes to do so. I think what we end up uncovering is, yes, the negative, as in, I see what's triggering me to feel overwhelmed. I know what's triggering me to feel, frustrated when I walk in the door, but what's actually triggering you when you're not feeling those things? So when you come home from work and you actually feel content one day, or you feel like, okay, I can tackle this today. Why? What created that moment for you? And how do we get that again and again and again? So I look for, I want them to tell me what makes them feel bad, but also what makes them feel good. And then we kind of work on that. But it really is the tuning into like, oh, the increasing awareness of how am I feeling? Because we can, it just takes some focus and time to figure it out. So that's where we start. And then the second piece of that is, okay, we figured some things out. How do we find time in order for you to apply some coping skills to work on this stuff? And so that's when we start looking at more of the logistical sense of like, how do you get a 30-minute break twice a week without a kid or without work? What would make that possible? Do we have to advocate for your needs with your partner? Or do we need to look at outsourcing care? Do we need, what can you financially afford? What are you able to access? Have you tried advocating for your needs and it's been unsuccessful? So kind of then applying, right? The next step there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like moms hold themselves back from advocating for what they need or even making the ask because we feel bad. We feel like we're supposed to be with our kids all the time, supposed to be enjoying that shit, supposed to be calm and regulated. And it's like, no, listen, from us to moms to you, like we all need a break from our children. They are relentless. They are overstimulating. We love them dearly, but for Pete's sake, it is normal to need a break. So also look at, like you were talking about, growing awareness, which I think is really important. It's the vehicle to any change you want to make in your life.
Yeah.
Like, what is holding you back from asking for what you need or doing those things? It's usually like guilt or shame related, which means you have some deep core beliefs about what a good mom does. And we're here to debunk that shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I also love what you said about awareness in terms of like, it's like we're really aware when we're having a bad moment, like a overstimulated, we lashed out at our kids moment, but we don't sit and really soak up the goodness of a moment where we did feel a little bit more at ease, or a moment when we did feel that intense love with our kids or connection with our partner. We don't allow ourselves to sit and like expand in that. And moms, we're not saying you need to create 2 hours a day for your self-care. We're saying start with packets, little baby steps, little minutes. Of course, you can absolutely create these little minutes for yourself if you prioritize yourself and let yourself be present in them and expand. And then you'll start to get almost addicted to how good that feels. Then you'll have that intrinsic motivation to create more and more and more. But starting small is the key. Don't you agree? It's like no one's going to suddenly have a half day here and a half day there to go on a small retreat. We're working within what you guys got going on.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely within the first couple sessions with almost every client will say like, I know we both want to go on a 7-day cruise alone, but that's not going to happen. So how can we replicate some of that feeling every single day? I think once we become in tune and aware of what our body and brain and heart are doing every single day, which is the physical, mental, and emotional, right? Body, brain, and heart. We become in tune to that every single day on a minor level. You're not unpacking your childhood trauma yet. You may do that eventually, but right now we're looking just at like surface level what's going on with us. You kind of can start to see, okay, again, I know what makes me feel bad, but now I'm starting to notice that when I go for a walk in the morning, I feel good. And when you start paying attention to that, then it becomes more motivating to prioritize those things. So that's when the second piece that comes into play, which is that logistics of like, okay, how do we make it happen? So do we need to block off 15 minutes increments in your calendar, in your work calendar, so that nobody contacts you or nobody schedules a meeting for you there so that you can step outside and away from your computer for 15 minutes? God forbid, right? So like, how do we make that happen for you? And, the analogy of the battery, I think is super powerful in that like, if you wait to recharge your battery when it's at 5%, it has to sit on the charger for a long time. But if you burst charge your battery a little bit through the day, I don't know what's better for Apple products, but I know what's better for like human beings. And so if you recharge yourself in little bursts through the day, you are going to be way more likely to make it through dinner time and bedtime routine with your kid than you are if you let your battery drain the whole day and get to 0% at 5 o'clock. You need to be at like 40% at 5 o'clock. And how do you do that? You have to plug in your battery a little bit every single day through the day. 5 minutes here, a glass of water there, a protein-filled lunch there, sunshine for 2 minutes, whatever it is, whatever works for you, but you've got to do it. And when you start doing it, like you said, you'll notice because you become in tune to yourself. And then when you notice that, you're like, okay, I can do that again tomorrow. Or yeah, like that means I'm going to, prep for tomorrow because I know how I felt today. So yeah, that motivation piece and realizing like, I can do this is really powerful.
Yeah. And I also love the analogy of the battery, and I love creating mini charging stations. Now, for you,
Yeah.
personally, as a busy working mama, what does your day look like in terms of filling up or charging to help you prevent burnout? Like, what are you currently working on? What's in your toolkit?
So a change I've made recently that I've realized is like, so I love cold brew. I love coffee. I love caffeine. I love caffeine in the form of iced tea. I love all of that. But it took me a bit to get there. But I realized that if I have an afternoon hit of caffeine, then I am exhausted by 5 o'clock. And so that's a minor change that I made that has made a world of difference because you have to fight through the initial brain fog and all of that, for kind of reducing it. And so, managing my caffeine intake is a small thing that I know I can do to make myself feel better. The other thing is, and these are all, they're cliche, but they're cliche because they work. But like going for a walk, to be honest, like 20 minutes, I go, I walk, and I come back, and I can look at my steps, and like looking at my steps is motivating. So I see like, oh, I did get like closer to wherever I want to be today. That I'm going to do that again tomorrow. So those are some small things. I think too, a big change I made in the mornings with my daughter, like getting a child up and ready, is like living 7 lifetimes by 8 o'clock, right? So like a big change I made there is like, sure, most mornings I do like to get up a few minutes before her so I can drink a little coffee in peace. I don't always, but sometimes I do. But it's less about that and it's more about approaching like when I open her bedroom door, if I have the mindset of we don't have to be in a rush, I can come in, I can approach her this way. I know she responds better when I approach her this way. It's like I have to prepare my own mindset to start the day. And that morning routine is the first thing to tackle, right? And so some of it is like setting my own mindset from the very beginning of waking up to whatever happens, happens. If we're late, we're late. We'll figure it out. I've prepared all that I can. She's a person who has her own moods and we'll deal with them as they come. I have to pep talk myself. And I have found that helps as well. And again, that's free. That takes 2 minutes, but that helps me feel better. And I know that. And once I in tune to that, it motivated me to do it more. Mm-hmm. So a little physical, a little mental, and then, a little emotional, making sure I'm processing my emotions and all that. But that's bigger work that can take some guidance on how to do that. But I think, again, like little tiny things to hit each of those categories, physical, mental, and emotional, it can just set us up for success and help us, preserve a little energy and a little headspace to make it through every day.
Yes. I love what you said about the mindset shift because I feel
Yeah.
like that is managing your anxiety, right? Like I notice in myself, I was just talking about this with a client the other day. I noticed that when I'm anxious, I'm more rigid in my parenting.
Uh-huh.
It's like everything fucking matters. Getting to school on time, having a great lunch, having a great Halloween costume, da, 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 da. And I have to pause and take a breath and get curious about like, does that actually freaking matter that much?
Yeah, right.
Like in the grand scheme of things, what even is school? Are we even giving the kids what they need? Like their emotional needs are more important. My connection to my child is more important.
Yeah.
My anxiety being manageable is more important. Being present for the moments is more important. And yet somehow I get caught in this trap sometimes of rigidity that is totally fueled by anxiety. And so when you pause to breathe and check yourself and like remember what's important as a mother, your values as a mother, and not letting your mind manage you, but letting your heart manage you, that absolutely changes the flow of my day and the state of how I feel in what I'm doing throughout the day. But that's a huge piece of just remembering what's important and like, not everything is urgent. Not everything is like a matter of right now. These things that are usually making us have issues with our children. Like you said, it's like running a marathon by 8 a.m. I think every mom can so relate to that. Like we are making it harder on ourselves by thinking all these things are so important and letting our anxiety fuel it. So that's something I'm always working on is if I'm feeling really rigid in my parenting, whoa, I need to take a step back, put some more into that mind work of like, this isn't even that big of a deal. Who cares if we're late? Like whoop-de-woo.
Yeah, I think that's so neat that you connected that with increased anxiety and that knowing like, you wake up and you can feel maybe you have a big day at work or something and, you can feel that you're already being hit with anxiety that then you tend to approach parenting in a more rigid way. I think that's really a great connection. And I think from an early childhood standpoint, or if we're talking about like a parenting standpoint, when you approach your kids in a rigid, anxiety fueled, let's go, let's go, let's go, guess what they're going to do? They're going to fight back. They're going to say like, whoa, 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 whoa. Something's off with you, mom. And that means something's off with me. And I'm not going to do what you asked me to do because this is weird and I don't like it. From a kid perspective, all they want is for you to come in and feel like they want to feel like you've got this under control. That's what they want to feel like overall, over everything. They want to feel like mom's got this. I don't have to worry about things. I don't have to seek control. I don't have to fight you on stuff because you've got it. Mom's got all the worries and she's handling it. And so when you come in the opposite way, which is gotta go, I'm anxious about work and I'm short with you and it's all spilling over, that's when they say like, whoa, mom doesn't have this under control. Mom's uncomfortable. Mom's anxious and nervous. And so that makes me uncomfortable and anxious too. And then I fight back. Sometimes literally, but mostly like, I'm not going to brush my teeth because this is weird and I'm uncomfortable and I don't like it. So it is fueled by that connection and that vibe. I talk about vibes all the time because, you can't really pinpoint a vibe, but you can feel it and you know it. And so when I talk with parents, I'm like, it's not about what you say. It's not even about what you do. It's about the vibe that you send off to your kids that I feel good today, even if you have to fake it sometimes, but I'm feeling good. I've got it under control. We're good, girl. Like we are good. And when they feel that, they're going to be way more likely to do what you ask them to do, way more likely to do the steps in their routine, and way more likely to get in the car and actually get to school on time. So it is about the mindset and managing our own anxiety, managing our own depression, managing our own whatever we've got going on, because kids will immediately sense when we don't have it all together. Or when we don't even, feel comfortable not having it all together. Something just happened yesterday where we went to a family member's house and we forgot bracelets that we had made for our cousins and family members or whatever. Taylor Swift bracelets, by the way. We forgot it, right? And on the way, my husband sort of looks over at me and he was like, did you remember the bracelets? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't. I forgot them. And he was like, should I turn around? She's going to cry. And I was like, no, because one, we're already late. But two, she needs to also see that mom makes mistakes. and that it's not a big deal. Like, mom's sorry and she forgot them and it is my fault and I'm going to own up to it and repair for it and all that. But that, like, things happen. We'll get them to them next weekend when we see them again. Ultimately, like, she didn't cry and she was fine. But it's because I sent the vibe that, like, hey, I messed up and I forgot them. But we're going to see them again in 5 days and it's okay. But if I had approached it as like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, like, oh, it's okay, don't cry. What is she going to do? She's going to freak out. So it's about managing ourselves.
Energy matches like energy.
Yes, yes. And it's so funny because, like, I am a clinical therapist. Not everything is about vibes and energy, but man, are they important.
Yes, you guys. There's so much overlap with energy and mental health and all that. It's like if your kiddo is mirroring for you these behaviors, they're mirroring something inside of you that, you deserve time and space and resources to help you navigate. Like, they're going to be more, not every child, but they're more likely to be more calm the more calm you are, And so, I totally believe in energy and that like energy attracts like energy because I can feel us escalate together and I can feel us co-regulate together. And
absolutely.
Has an energetic component. So when I'm in my anxiety, when I'm in my rigidity, that has a vibration to it that then our kids can sense because they're extraordinarily intuitive and they're going, oh God, mom's worked out. So then their little nervous system fires up. And now we've got two dysregulated folks. And so this is why it's so important that mom pours into herself first so she can be a regulated nervous system, so she can be more conscious in her parenting, which is going to make everything so much easier. And is it about getting it right all the time? No, we're still going to have our moments. But when we pour into ourselves, I know for me, going back to what you were saying about like having time alone, I tend to be more anxious and more rigid when I'm not getting any alone time to think to do my own thoughts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To do my own thoughts. And so when I'm being rigid like that, I'm like, okay, let me look. Have I had time to myself? Did I skip my bath last night? Have I skipped my morning ritual? I need to recommit to those rituals that make me feel more regulated in my nervous system. So I'm not presenting as, an angry, resentful, anxious parent. And so our kids will mirror for us what we need.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what you touched on too is that, like, sometimes it's not even about self-care, it's about basic needs. We're so like convinced that we have to sacrifice everything all the time. And sometimes we are in relationships with partners who are on board with that, who convince us that that's our job. It's not our job to sacrifice our basic needs to parent or to run the home. So a lot of times when kind of going back to what you said about how do I identify moms in burnout, one piece of this is kind of looking at our day and saying, if I looked at the morning, afternoon, and evening, am I drinking water in all three of those time periods? Am I eating real food and not just the crusts of my kids' peanut butter and jelly? Am I taking a couple minutes to step outside and away from the computer if I'm attached to the computer all day? Like, am I meeting my basic needs every single day? And if I'm not, we have to start there, because if I haven't had a shower in 2 weeks, then I'm certainly not going to go get my nails done or sit and read a book or, like do all the things that take more time, because I haven't even showered. I haven't even had water today and it's 2 p.m. And so I think meeting those basic needs has to come first. And so if we start there, that's what we start with. And if, I tell my clients, if you have to write it down, write it down. If you have to set a reminder in your calendar, go for it. But you need to be meeting your basic needs at several points every single day. And it starts there. It all comes back to us as parents and a lot of times as moms, because our perspective is just unique.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I think people are absolutely shaking their head right now. Like, I forget to eat. I forget to hydrate. I forget to move my body. I don't take care of myself in the same way that I take care of my children. That then I shame myself when I'm at wit's end by the end of the night with my kids. And I've been touched out and overstimulated and needed by everyone and everything all day long.
I can't tell you how many times, and I've tried to be more aware of it lately, again, as a little personal thing that I'm working on, that I will get everybody ready to go. I only have one kid, but it's still the same. But get my kid ready, you get my husband ready, everything we need, right? We get ready to go. And this whole time I've had to pee. And I have not stopped to pee because I know we got things to do. I'm focused. Let's get in the car. Let's do. And I can't tell you how many times I've left the house having to go to the bathroom so badly because I haven't taken the 2 minutes it takes to actually stop and pee because I'm focused on everybody else doing and that's like, I feel like that's a very concrete example of what we're talking about. And it's a minor example, but is it minor? Like,
No.
like, right?
No, it's not minor. It's like, okay, let me tell you mine. My example of that, it's when we travel. So whenever we're traveling as a family, I make sure everyone's packed. I'm rushing through. I'm getting everything scheduled, everyone communicated to, buttoning everything up, making sure everyone has everything they could potentially need on that trip. Then we'll get there and I will have forgot something like core to my existence, like my mental health medication or my bra or a swimsuit. And I'll look at my partner and I'll shit you not. He will have brought his favorite pillow. He will have brought every single one of his devices and all the necessary chargers.
I was going to say a charger and an extra charger, just in case.
Yeah. I swear, like, fire starts coming out of my eyeballs. Like, you motherfucker. Of course, because you only focused on you. You have all your needs met. But because I made sure everyone's needs were met, I don't have a basic need of mine. And that happens every time we travel. And it has for 20 years. I still have not figured that out. So it's just like natural for us to just run on empty, make sure everyone else is okay, and then later regret it because we're on empty.
The very first vacation we took my daughter when she was 1, we went to Florida and packed, everything, of course, overpacked because she's 1 and I was, like nervous about everything. We arrived and within a couple hours realized I hadn't packed any underwear for myself whatsoever. And so I had to wear Dollar Tree underwear because that was the place to get it. And also, like, God forbid I actually drive to a Target or something, but Dollar Tree underwear the entire week because I forgot them because I was remembering everything else. So yes, and I agree. I don't have a solid answer for that because I do feel like it's just this drive to like do things for others because it's so important to us. And this is where I think like if you do seek a therapist or seek a professional, they need to understand that we are intertwined with our kids. There's no separating our kids from us. And so like when I talk to a parent, I'm not going to deny the fact that they want their kids to have an amazing vacation. They want their kids to be prepared for school. They want their kids to have a good lunch when they open their lunchbox. I'm not denying any of that. I mostly validate that like, so do I. I want all those things too. But also that there is something to be said for managing our own perception and our expectations of what's okay and what's not okay, to be okay with being imperfect and to prioritize a little differently. And when we do that, when we prioritize ourselves, our kids will still be successful. They will still have everything they need, and they will still be incredibly connected and attached to us. And sometimes even more so because we've been able to put some stuff into ourselves.
Yes. Well, and I feel like you and I are on a mission to help moms do just that so they don't end up wearing Dollar Tree undies.
Yeah. I need to start a series or something about talking about priorities and we'll just call it Dollar Tree undies.
And listen, no shade to those who choose to wear Dollar Tree undies.
Oh, not at all.
Conscious choice, go off clean. But if it's a not conscious choice, that is not right. These are undergarments. That's another thing. Like my husband always has like new socks that he's never worn and new undies he's never worn. And I'm like holes in my socks kind of gal. And he's just like, bro, what is this? Like, we make enough money for you to have new undergarments. And I'm like, I just don't prioritize it. It's not important to me. It's way low on the list. And there's so much in my mental load above that there's literally no space for new socks, new underwear, new bras, any of it. Like we're rocking the same shit we've been rocking since like the early 2000s.
Yeah,
which
absolutely
is another important thing for us to get into, which is that mental load that moms carry and how that kind of can sometimes be a really sneaky thief of our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So what do you have to say about that? Or even the decision fatigue piece that you were talking a little bit about before we hopped on?
I think it comes down to the expectation that we are just going to carry it, that this is ours to hold entirely, that as the woman, the mother of the home, that is our job. And I think that's been given to us from our parents, that's been passed down to us a little bit. But I also think it's hammered into us from society, from social media, that this is our job and this is what we're supposed to do. And so when we partner up with somebody who also has that perspective and who comes into this partnership that, well, that's yours. You carry all of that. It's never spoken out loud. It's unspoken. But when you partner up with somebody who confirms that through their actions, through their behavior, through their lack of participation in household activities, then it's just reaffirmed and you just keep doing it because you want your kids to be successful and do all the things and feel great. But here's what I've been thinking about a lot lately and doing a lot of social media posts about and stuff is this whole concept of reading the room. And with reading the room, what I consider that to be is having a partner who is aware of what's going on in the home, who comes in home from work, looks around, and instead of just walking off to take a shower and change their clothes, they look around and see the baby's crying. Mom looks like she hasn't slept in 7 days. There's dishes in the sink. The trash is full. And instead of making the choice to go into the bathroom and take a shower and change their clothes and do what they need to do, they look around and say, okay, I see that the trash needs to be taken out, so I'm going to do it. And so what that does too is it bypasses the, hey, honey, what do you need from me? What do you want me to do? Because I, as the mental load carrier, I can't handle that question.
Yeah.
And I know it's so little. And partners think that they're being so helpful when they say, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Look around. There's plenty to be done. And if you would come home from work and look around and see what needs to be done and just do it, that would be great. So I think there's the expectation, but also this inability or unwillingness to read the room and take it upon myself to do things that seem supportive and helpful for you because I see that you're struggling. So I think there's the two parts of it. And I don't know. I think even it all kind of comes back to advocacy for what we need and what we want, but we have to know what we need and what we want to do that. But yeah, I think it's kind of just been passed down to us and we don't know how to do anything else. And we don't have partners who are coming in and saying like, hey, I see you're overloaded. I'm going to take the pediatrician appointment off your list and I'll just take care of it. Our partners aren't doing that and they need to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a difference between, I learned this from Fair Play. There's a difference between managers and executors. So
yes.
I have to manage everything, which is carrying the mental load. I know that we're due for a pediatrician appointment.
Yeah.
I know what's going on at school and dance and college and social lives and birthday parties. Then I have to know where we're at with all that, to then know the priority of all that, to then delegate to you something off my list. At that point, that's not a partnership. That's I'm your boss and you're the team member. And there's a reason why the managers make more money than the team members because they carry more responsibility. So it isn't, what can I take off your plate, honey? It's, I can see you're holding so much. Let me own schoolwork and homework, so let me own health and wellness appointments. Let me own soccer from start to finish. And really becoming a manager and deciding as a couple, well, what do we really value in our family and who's going to carry what? And so I remember the beginning of this year having a conversation with my partner around, I need you to manage all things school, like all the emails, homework, because I was managing everything else. And he's passionate about doing homework, like Chloe's gifted and talented like him. So they bond their little cute brains. And I'm like, I need you to just own it. I get to come to you and be like, what's going on with school? And just you come to me. And so that's a huge part of that mental load too, is not just delegating tasks, not just giving them what they can do. And it's them, like you said, reading the room and recognizing there's a part of the pie that I should be owning from start to finish as a leader in this freaking family. And here's the thing. They act like they can't read the room at home, but they could read the room at work.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Your store and you can see what needs to be done, or your office, you can see what you can manage that. So you can also do that. You can read the room and see what needs to be done. Here, you just have shut it off because you've assumed that I got it and I'll take it.
Yes. And I think that there's a tiny piece of that within us that if that were to occur, that we also have to back off on the control of it a little bit and have different expectations than if we were accomplishing that piece, right? Because I think that happens
100%.
sometimes too, where, somebody says, okay, I will take all meal planning and I will take meal prep and planning and all of that. And then the partner kind of comes in and is like, that's what we're having for dinner? Or like, do you think you
Can't
could
do
include
that. You
more
can't do that.
vegetables?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to kind of, and part of that is just kind of taking care of ourselves, and that we have to let go of some of that control. But because that's really rooted in anxiety, right? It's like, I have to let go of some of that in order to achieve a higher level of being, right? In order to feel better. I can't drive that task anymore. And if I want somebody else to help me with it, I have to let it be. I have to let it go.
Yeah.
And we'll be better for it. But it's hard to do that. I understand it's very hard to do that, because I think what comes with that mental load is this, like, sort of, when you carry the mental load, okay, I'm going to own it and I'm going to control everything. And there's this great theme I've been seeing lately is like, is it type A, or is it just that I'm expected to control everything? And so I've taken control, which I love, right? Like, how do we know? Is this my personality, or is this because I have to? Is this because I haven't had a choice for 15 years and I've just done it? I love that conversation too. And that could go a lot deeper. But I think we have to sort of manage our own anxieties related to our expectations and choose to step back a little bit.
Yes.
And it's not always fair to feel like you have to do that, or you have to lower your expectations so that your partner will actually contribute. But I encourage you to maybe reassess that. Is it lowering or is it different? And does the task still get done? Is the task done? Is the child unaware of the differences? Is everybody happy? Is everybody feeling good? Okay, then we're just going to let it be in order to have a little extra time or a little extra support.
That is a key piece in the puzzle for sure. You can't give it to them and then criticize them or constantly assess it, because you're still giving it mental energy by assessing the quality that they're doing. And so let it go if you can. It is hard to level set expectations, but the truth is it's all subjective anyways, right?
Yeah,
what is a good meal is subjective. What is a good play date is subjective. What is a good mother is subjective. And I don't live in a space where I think my way is the right way. I live in a space where I know I'm just always learning new ways and growing, and I have some strengths, but I also have some weaknesses, and I have blind spots, and I have neuroses and things that annoy me, but none of it is right or wrong. It just is. And if I really want help, I have to not only invite the help in, but allow it. And that looks like you said, managing expectations.
Yeah. Parenting and motherhood is so not black and white. It's just so gray. We have to go with the flow in between in order to fight that sort of innate need to categorize everything and to label it all, because there's nothing about motherhood that falls in a category. It's all in between. It's all in the gray. It's all sort of taking each wave as it comes and learning and growing with that. And I think it's driven by our current sort of access to social media, access to Google at all hours, that we should know everything about being a mom. We birth a baby and then we should just be perfect. We should be the perfect mom. You have Google, you can Google everything. You should know it all, and you should be applying it all to your child. And so we have these just really high expectations for ourselves. Ultimately, we're the only ones putting it on ourselves. Ultimately, we're taking in information and skewing it so that we're expecting too much out of ourselves. And so that's where, again, it comes back to us to say, it's okay if we don't meet those expectations. Those expectations are fake. They're not real. And they can change just like everything else in our lives. So managing that piece, I think, is important too.
Absolutely. It's like we've learned how to be a quote unquote perfect mother, but we can also relearn how to be a good enough mother.
Yeah.
Yes. Space for our own individual wellness, self-care, all that good stuff.
Yeah. I think that's a good summary of it, is good enough, right?
We
just have to be good enough. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. That to me, and when I think about level setting expectations, it's like, I'm not going for perfection anymore. I'm going for good enough. I look for the enoughness. Let me ask you this. What is the one thing that really, because, I love talking about kind of the messiest moments or the hardest things about being a mom. And I think people don't talk enough about those. We often suffer in silence with our own struggle. What has been the thing that's really kind of shook you or surprised you the most about parenthood that no one talked about before?
That's a good question. It's a big question. This kind of touches on what we talked about earlier, but I think it's how clearly your child will reflect back to you how you are feeling inside. I mean, I think when we think of, having a baby and parenting and all that, we understand we're going to have to make, what do we do when they touch the electrical outlet, and how do we feed them fruits and vegetables? I think we get that part, even though that part's not easy either, but we get it, that that's a responsibility of ours. But I don't think we really quite realize that another responsibility of ours is to take care of ourselves so that that reflects on our kid. And I definitely did not know that, when I had a kid, that I would have to take care of myself in order to take care of my kid. The other thing that I think is interesting, and this is in a little bit of a different direction, when you have a kid, again, you expect some of the parenting stuff, but I don't think I ever knew that I would have to teach my child about her emotions, what to do with them, how to handle them, what would make her feel that way. I think we're really pushed to teach letters and numbers and shapes and colors. But what we really should be pushed to teach is emotional intelligence. And so many of our daycares and preschools, say they cover it, but they don't. But it's really on us, right? It's really on us to teach and reflect that emotional intelligence, because they will reflect it back. And so I think it does go back to that reflection that I have to model what I want to see from my kid. And I just never really, having a kid, I don't think you think about that I've got to have my shit together, because she's going to tell if I don't immediately without me saying a word. So I've got to, have it together enough to reflect what I want from her, which means I better take care of myself to do it.
Wow. That is like an oof moment, right? It's such an oof. It's like,
Yeah.
You mean I'm going to have to be okay in order for my kids to be okay? I can't just force something outside of myself to be okay. It's so true. It's so deep. No one talks about it. It's so real.
Yeah.
And, they show us our growth areas. They show us where we need to level up, where we need to be better, where we need to be healthier. And so it is like a never ending growth opportunity that is so deeply personal. And that's why it's almost like spiritual in some ways. It just cracks you wide open. Just when you think you know who you are, you become a mother and you're like, oh, yeah,
right.
Layers to this bee. There are layers beyond layers to this bee. And it really never ends. I have a 20-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I am still uncovering cracks and patching things up and peeling back layers, and also letting light shine through in ways that never did before. It is just like a stretch mobile. Let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, the expectation that when you have a child, you are not going to be the same person you were before. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you can grieve the loss of that, but then having to flip that into I'm going to grow into an even better person because of my child, but I have to allow myself to do it. I have to be there for myself and support myself in that growth. Nobody else is going to do it for me. So I have to support myself in that. And I'm going to make mistakes along the way, and I'm going to screw up, and my kid's going to scream and yell, and we're all going to have all these meltdowns, and that's okay. We're all on this path together, but I have to let myself do it, and I have to support myself in it and advocate for my needs along the way.
Boom. That is such a wonderful place to end. Stacy, thank you so much. I love your energy. You're just like the smart cookie who frames things up in a way that's hilarious and yet just pungent. It just hits every time. And I'm just proud to stand alongside you and being part of this mommy's mental health movement. And I appreciate you taking the time to come here and chat on the podcast. I appreciate the work that you're putting out in the world, and tell the listeners where they can connect with you after this conversation.
Yeah, my Instagram is probably the most active place where I'm at, and has all my, my website and all of that, all my details, which is at Present Parent CS. That is probably the easiest way to reach me. I would just go there. I do have a Facebook page as well, but Instagram is where it's at. I like to hang out there. I do really appreciate you having me as well. And I think you're doing amazing work here as well. Just kind of normalizing all of this and validating it, and just kind of letting moms sort of see that we're all experiencing a version of this, and that's okay. And we'll figure it out together, but we have to talk about it first. We have to get it out first. And so that's kind of, I think, where you're supporting a lot of people and like, let's put words to it. Let's talk about how much it sucks. And then we'll figure out like, what do we do about it? So I appreciate that you're doing that as well. And we'll just keep finding all the people. We're all doing this and get together and we'll start a movement. And I think it'll be great.
Yeah, no, it's powerful stuff. It's definitely, I already see it happening. The more we can, talk about it, we get out of the shame of it and we realize it's not you. You're not wrong. You're not bad. You're not a bad mom. Just the gig is hard. It's also the most beautiful thing you'll ever do. But we need tools. We need community. And so we'll keep building community for you, mamas. And for the listener, thank you as always for spending your precious time with me and with Stacy today. We wish you guys a beautiful rest of the day. And I will see you all same time, same place next week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Unperfected Pod. I hope this episode helped you feel a little less alone and a little more inspired to be you. If you like what we're doing here, I would so appreciate that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you do, share the episode on Instagram and tag me at BrookeJeanUnperfected to enter to win a 1-to-1 laser coaching session. Also, feel free to join me in my private Facebook community, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we continue the conversation. Thanks again for being here and see you in next week's episode.